Admiral Taman Park stood on the bridge of the massive warship Eternal Dawn, watching the stars stretch into lines as 900,000 ships jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Earth was a dead ball of melted rock and poisoned water. Ahead lay the enemy homeworld, where the aliens who destroyed his planet waited for justice. 50 years had passed since the day the sky burned. Taman remembered it like yesterday. He was only 12 then, playing in his backyard in Seoul when the first alien ships appeared. They came without warning, without demands, without mercy. The hegemony wanted Earth dead, and they made it happen. In 3 terrible days, the aliens used weapons that turned cities into glass. They boiled the oceans and cracked the ground open like an egg. Billions died screaming. The lucky ones died quickly. Taman's family was not lucky. He survived because his school had an old bomb shelter from the 20th century. 37 children hid underground for 2 weeks, listening to the world end above them. When they finally came out, Earth was quiet. The aliens were gone. Everything else was dead or dying. Now Taman was 62 years old and the admiral of humanity's revenge. Behind him sailed the largest fleet ever built by human hands. Each ship carried weapons designed for one purpose: to make the hegemony pay for what they did to Earth. Captain Sora Kim walked up to him with a datapad in her hands. She was the fleet's intelligence officer, a thin woman with sharp eyes who never smiled anymore. The war had taken her smile along with everything else. "Final report from our scouts, Admiral," she said. "Nexus Prime is lightly defended. Maybe 100 ships around the planet. Their main fleet seems to be somewhere else." Taman nodded. "Good. The cowards probably didn't expect us to follow them home." Sora looked at the numbers again. "It seems almost too easy, sir. Our intelligence says they had thousands of ships when they attacked Earth. Where are they now?" "Does it matter?" Taman asked. "We have 900,000 warships. They have 100. This will be over quickly." Dr. Haijin Choi, the fleet's chief science officer, joined them at the command station. She was younger than the others. Born after the war in one of the colony worlds. She had never seen Earth when it was alive, but she understood what they had lost. "Admiral, I've been studying the reports from our advanced scouts," she said. "Something strange is happening in hegemony space. Several star systems that should be full of their colonies are showing no signs of life. Maybe they moved their people to defend their homeworld," Commander J-Ho Lee suggested as he approached. He was Taman's tactical officer, a man who had spent 30 years planning this attack. Every detail of the coming battle lived in his head. "Or maybe they're hiding," Sora said, "waiting for us to spread out so they can attack our flanks." Taman studied the star map on the main screen. The hegemony controlled dozens of systems. Their empire was huge, much larger than humanity's scattered colonies, but size didn't matter now. What mattered was making them pay. "How long until we reach Nexus Prime?" he asked. 6 more months at current speed," J-Ho replied. "The fleet is holding formation well. No technical problems? 6 months?" Taman had waited 50 years. He could wait 6 more months. Every day brought them closer to justice. Every hour brought them closer to making the aliens understand what it felt like to watch their world burn. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Around them, space was full of human warships stretching as far as the eye could see. Each ship carried a crew that had lost someone on Earth. Each captain had sworn the same oath: no mercy for the enemy. Tae-Min remembered taking that oath himself 20 years ago when he first joined the Space Navy. He was standing in a recruitment office on Mars, looking at pictures of Earth before the attack. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds. Now it was all gray ash and red fire. "Admiral," Sora said quietly, "what happens after we win?" It was a question Taman had thought about many times. What would they do when the last hegemony world was burning? Where would they go when justice was done? "We go home," he said. "We rebuild. But Earth is dead, sir." "There's nothing left to rebuild." "Then we make a new Earth, somewhere else, somewhere safe." Haijin was still studying her data. Pad. The energy readings from the empty systems are very strange, she said. It's like the planets are there, but nobody's living on them anymore. Maybe they evacuated, Jeho suggested. Moved everyone to their core worlds for protection. Maybe, Hyjin said, but she didn't sound convinced. Taemin walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens who killed his family were waiting. They probably thought they were safe in their home system. They probably thought humans were too weak to fight back. They were wrong. Humanity had spent 50 years building this fleet. Every asteroid was mined for metal. Every colony contributed ships and weapons. Every human who survived Earth's death had worked toward this moment. The ships around them were beautiful and terrible. Some were as large as cities, carrying thousands of fighters and enough firepower to crack planets. Others were small and fast, designed to hunt down fleeing enemies. All of them had one thing in common. They were painted with the colors of Earth. Blue and green and white to remember what was lost. Signal from the Vengeance, the communications officer reported. Captain Minho requests permission to scout ahead. Granted, Taemin said. Tell him to be careful. We don't want to warn them we're coming. As the Vengeance broke formation and sped toward enemy space, Taemin thought about the day they would finally see Nexus Prime. He had imagined it 1,000 times. The alien planet would be beautiful, just like Earth used to be. And then they would make it burn. The hegemony had taught humanity an important lesson 50 years ago. The universe was not safe. Peace was not possible. The only way to survive was to be stronger than your enemies. The only way to protect what you loved was to destroy what threatened it. So Ra came to stand beside him. My daughter would have been 55 today, she said quietly. Tae-Min nodded. Everyone in the fleet had lost someone. Everyone carried their own ghosts. She have just as soon. I know, so Ra said. But sometimes I wonder if she would want this. All this killing, they started it, Taemin replied. We're just finishing it. Behind them, 900,000 ships continued their journey toward the enemy homeworld. Each ship carried the anger of humanity. Each weapon was loaded with the pain of Earth's children. Each captain was ready to do whatever it took to make the aliens pay. The stars watched silently as humanity's greatest fleet sailed toward war. In 6 months, the hegemony would learn what happened when you hurt something humanity loved. In 6 months, justice would finally come home. Tae-Min stood on his bridge, surrounded by the tools of revenge, and smiled for the first time in 50 years. Soon, very soon, Earth would be avenged. 3 months into their journey, strange things began happening to the fleet. It started small. Navigation computers would show different readings for the same star. Sensor operators would detect ships that weren't there when they looked again. Time itself seemed to move differently from one part of the fleet to another. Dr. Hyjin Choi spent her days trying to understand what was wrong. She worked in the science lab aboard the Eternal Dawn, surrounded by screens full of data that made no sense. Space was supposed to be predictable. Stars stayed where they were. Time moved at the same speed for everyone. But something was changing the rules. Look at this, she said to her assistant, showing him readings from the outer edge of the fleet. These ships are reporting that only 2 months have passed since we left home, but our clocks say 3 months. Maybe their chronometers are broken, he suggested. I checked. All their equipment is working fine. It's like time is moving slower for them than it is for us. Lieutenant Wu Jin-han was having his own problems. He flew one of the small scout ships that checked the space ahead of the fleet. His job was to make sure nothing dangerous was waiting for them. But lately his job was getting very strange. 3 days ago, he had flown to a nearby star system to check for hegemony patrols. What he found made no sense. The system had 6 planets, including one that should have been full of alien cities. But when he got there, he found empty buildings and silent streets. The cities were beautiful. Tall towers made of crystal reached toward the sky. Gardens with alien plants grew between the buildings, but nobody was home. The power was still on. Food was still fresh in the refrigerators. But every living thing was gone. Wu Jin had taken pictures and samples before returning to the fleet. Now he was flying toward another system, hoping to find answers. But he had a feeling he would just find more empty worlds. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Ba Yang sat in the communications center, listening to space. Her job was to monitor enemy radio signals and watch for signs of hegemony activity. But instead of enemy transmissions, she was hearing something much stranger. The signals came from every direction. They were weak and broken, like voices calling from very far away. She couldn't understand the language, but something about them made her feel sad. They sounded like goodbye messages. "Admiral," she said when Taemin visited the communications center, "I'm picking up transmissions that don't match any known hegemony dialects. They seem to be coming from dead systems." Taemin frowned. Dead systems? Systems where our scouts found empty worlds. The signals are very old, maybe decades. But they're still bouncing around space. What do they say? I don't know yet. The language is completely unknown. But Dr. Choi thinks she might be able to translate them if I can get cleaner recordings. Taemin nodded. "Keep listening. Any information about the enemy could be useful." But privately, Taemin was starting to worry. The reports from the scouts were disturbing. System after system was empty of life. It was as if entire civilizations had simply walked away from their homes and disappeared. Captain Sora Kim had noticed the pattern too. She came to Taemin's quarters that evening with a folder full of reports. 16 systems, she said, sitting down across from his desk. 16 systems that should be full of hegemony colonies, all empty, no signs of battle. No radiation from weapons, no destroyed buildings, just dumpty. Maybe they're concentrating their population for defense, Taemin suggested. That's what I thought at first, but look at this. She opened the folder and pulled out photographs from Wu Jin's scouting missions. These cities weren't evacuated, they were abandoned. There's a difference. The pictures showed alien streets with vehicles stopped in the middle of roads, markets with fresh food still on the tables, playgrounds with toys scattered on the ground. It looked like everyone had suddenly decided to leave in the middle of their daily lives. How do you abandon an entire civilization? Taemin asked. I don't know. But whatever made them leave, it happened fast. That night, Taemin couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the empty worlds and the strange signals Bao Young was hearing. Something was wrong. This wasn't how he had imagined their approach to enemy territory would go. He had expected to fight patrol ships and defensive fleets. He had expected the hegemony to try to stop them before they reached Nexus Prime. Instead, they were sailing through space that felt like a graveyard. The next morning brought more disturbing news. Commander Jae-ho Lee reported that several ships in the fleet were experiencing navigation problems. It's like space is twisted, he explained during the morning briefing. Ships that should be next to each other are measuring different distances between themselves. Some captains report seeing other parts of the fleet that should be hundreds of kilometers away. Dr. Haijin Choi had been studying the problem all night. I think we're flying through some kind of spatial distortion, she sighed. Something is affecting the fabric of space-time around us. What could cause that? Taemin asked. I'm not sure. Maybe advanced alien technology. Or maybe natural phenomena we don't understand yet. Lieutenant Wu Jinhan returned from another scouting mission that afternoon with more disturbing news. He had found another empty system, but this one was different. This one had been hegemony territory for over 1,000 years according to their intelligence files. The cities are ancient, he reported. Some of the buildings are thousands of years old, but they're all empty, just like the others. Whatever happened, it didn't just affect new colonies. It affected their oldest worlds too. Bio Yang had made progress with the strange transmissions. Working with Dr. Choi, she had managed to translate a few words. They keep saying the same things, she told the senior staff. Words that translate to leaving, necessary, and pattern. There's another word that appears in every message, but we can't translate it yet. What does it sound like? Taemin asked. Something like loop, but it might mean something completely different in their language. The fleet continued its journey toward Nexus Prime, but the mood was changing. The crews had expected to fight their way through enemy territory. Instead, they were flying through a cosmic ghost town. Every day brought new reports of empty worlds and strange phenomena. Some of the younger crew members were getting scared. They had grown up hearing stories about the terrible hegemony, the cruel aliens who destroyed Earth without mercy. But the enemy they were finding didn't seem terrible at all. They seemed ... Captain Minho of the Vengeance sent a message asking for orders. "Should we continue to Nexus Prime?" he asked. "If all their worlds are empty, maybe their homeworld is too." Taemin thought about it for a long time before answering. They had come so far. They had spent 50 years preparing for this mission. They couldn't turn back now, not when they were so close to their goal. "We continue," he ordered. "Whatever happened to the hegemony colonies, we need to know for sure. We need to see Nexus Prime with our own eyes." But privately, Taemin was beginning to wonder if they would find any enemies left to fight. The empty worlds were like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Where had everyone gone? Why had they left? And why did it feel like something was watching the human fleet from the darkness between stars? 3 more months to Nexus Prime. 3 more months to find answers. 3 more months to learn whether their mission of revenge still had any meaning. The stars continued to watch as 900,000 ships sailed deeper into mystery. The day they reached hegemony space was the day everything Admiral Taemin Park believed about their enemy died. Nexus Prime hung in space before them like a blue and green jewel. It was beautiful, just as Earth had been beautiful before the burning. The planet's surface showed vast cities connected by silver roads. Orbital stations sparkled in the sunlight like metal flowers. Everything looked perfect and peaceful and completely empty. "Life signs?" Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. "None, sir," reported the sensor operator. "No biological readings from the planet or the stations. No energy signatures from active technology. No ship movements in the system." "Captain." Sora Kim stared at the main screen in disbelief. The entire hegemony homeworld empty. Commander Jae-ho Lee was scanning for threats that weren't there. "I count maybe 50 derelict ships in orbit. No power readings, no weapons charging. They're just ... floating." Dr. Haijin Choi was already working on the mystery. "The cities still have power. Life support systems are running. But according to our scans, nobody has been home for at least 3 years." 3 years. Taemin felt something cold settle in his stomach. 3 years ago, the human fleet was still being built in the asteroid fields around Mars. 3 years ago, they were still preparing for this moment of revenge. Somehow, the hegemony had known they were coming. "Take us into orbit," he ordered. "I want boarding teams on those derelict ships. I want answers." The Eternal Dawn moved closer to Nexus Prime, followed by the rest of the massive human fleet. 900,000 warships surrounded a world that had no one left to defend it. It felt like bringing a sword to fight a ghost. Commander Jae-ho Lee led the first boarding party to a massive hegemony dreadnought called the Starbreaker. The alien ship was 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could destroy planets. But its corridors were silent and its bridge was empty. The ship's computer systems were still working, the lights were on. The air was fresh and breathable, but the crew was gone. Personal belongings sat on desks as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. Coffee was still warm in some of the cups. "It's like they just disappeared in the middle of their daily routine," Jae-ho reported back to the fleet. "No signs of struggle, no emergency alarms, they just left." In the captain's quarters, they found something important, a data crystal containing the ship's logs. The writing was in the hegemony language, but Dr. Haijin Choi had learned enough to start translating. What she found made her hands shake. "Admiral," she said over the communication link, "you need to hear this. The last log entry is dated 3 years ago. It says, 'The message from Earth has been confirmed. All citizens are to evacuate immediately to the gathering points beyond the rim. The prophecy is beginning. We must not be here when the pattern completes itself.' The message from Earth?" Taemin repeated. "What message?" "I don't know yet." but there are references to other log entries. I need more time to translate them. While Hai-Jin worked on the translation, other boarding teams explored more ships. The story was the same everywhere. Sudden abandonment, personal belongings left behind, and computer logs talking about a message from Earth that had terrified an entire civilization into fleeing their homeworld. Lieutenant Wu Jin-han took his scout ship down to the planet's surface. The cities of Nexus Prime were even more strange than the empty ships. The architecture was beautiful, with towers that seemed to grow from the ground like trees and bridges that arced through the air like frozen lightning, but the cities were silent. Markets stood with fresh food rotting on the tables. Schools had books open on desks where alien children had been learning. Homes had toys scattered on floors where families had been living just 3 years ago. In the center of the capital city, Wu Jin found the hegemony's government building. It was a massive structure made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Inside, he found conference rooms where important meetings had been interrupted. Documents were scattered on tables. Computer screens still showed messages that had been sent but never answered. It's like they all got the same emergency signal at the same time, he reported. Everyone just stopped what they were doing and left. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Dr. Hai-Jin Choi was making progress with the ship logs. What she found was impossible to believe. Admiral, she said when she called the senior staff together, I've translated enough to understand what happened. 3 years ago, the hegemony received a transmission from Earth, but not from the Earth we know. According to these logs, the message came from Earth 47 years in the future. That's impossible, Sora said immediately. The logs are very detailed. They include scientific analysis of the transmission. The hegemony confirmed that the message was genuine, that it really came from a future version of Earth. What did the message say? Taemin asked. Hai-Jin pulled up her translation. On the main screen. It was a warning. Someone from our future told the hegemony that a massive human revenge fleet was coming. They gave exact details about our ships, our weapons, our battle plans, and they told the hegemony to evacuate immediately. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Nobody knew what to say. Who sent the message? Commander Jeho asked finally. The logs say it came from Admiral Taemin Park. Taemin felt the world spin around him. That's impossible. I've never sent any message to the hegemony. Not yet, Hai-Jin said quietly. According to the timestamp, the message was sent 47 years from now, 3 years after Earth was destroyed. But Earth is dead, Sora said. How could anyone send a message from a dead planet? I don't know, but the hegemony believed it was real. They evacuated their entire civilization based on that message. Liu Young-Yang had been listening to the conversation from her communications station. Admiral, she said, I think I should tell you something. I've been receiving strange signals for weeks now. Fragmentary transmissions that seem to be warnings about our fleet. They're being broadcast to unknown recipients in the outer galaxy. What kind of warnings? Fleet positions, ship counts, weapon specifications? Someone is telling other civilizations that we're coming. Taemin sat down heavily in his command chair. His mission of revenge had become something else entirely, something he didn't understand. The enemy he had come to destroy was gone, warned away by a future version of himself. And now someone was warning other civilizations about humanity's approach. The log entries mentioned something called the pattern, Hai-Jin continued. There are references to this happening before, to other species in other parts of the galaxy. The hegemony seemed to think they were part of some kind of cycle that repeats itself. What kind of cycle? I'm still translating, but it seems like young civilizations develop space travel, encounter aggressive neighbors, suffer massive losses, build revenge fleets, and then something happens, the pattern repeats. Captain Sora Kim was studying the tactical displays, trying to understand their situation. So we came here for revenge, but our enemies knew we were coming and ran away. And now we're sitting in empty space with 900,000 warships and no one to fight. That's about right, Taemin said grimly. What do we do now? It was the question Taemin had been dreading. They had spent 50 years preparing for this war. Hundreds of thousands of people had worked their entire lives to build this fleet. Every human who survived Earth's destruction had put their hope in this mission, and now there was no enemy to fight. "We find them," he said finally. "The hegemony went somewhere. We find out where and we follow them. Earth still demands justice." But privately, Taemin was beginning to wonder if justice was possible when your enemy knew every move you were going to make before you made it. How do you fight someone who has already seen the future? Outside the ship, Nexus Prime continued. Its silent orbit around its star. The empty world was beautiful and peaceful and full of mysteries that humanity was only beginning to understand. Dr. Haijin Choi had not slept in 3 days. She sat surrounded by alien computers, translation software, and cups of cold coffee, working to decode the message that had driven an entire civilization to abandon their homeworld. What she found in the hegemony records challenged everything she thought she knew about time and reality. "Admiral," she said when Taemin came to check on her progress, "I've found the complete transmission. You need to see this." She activated the holographic display in the center of the science lab. A figure appeared in the blue light, an older version of Admiral Taemin Park. His hair was gray. His face was lined with wrinkles, and his eyes held a sadness that the younger Taemin had never seen before. "This is Admiral Taemin Park of the Earth Defense Force," the older man said in a voice that was unmistakably Taemin's own, transmitting from Earth orbit on the 50th anniversary of our homeworld's destruction. "To the Hegemony High Command. I send this warning. You must evacuate your worlds immediately." The younger Taemin stared at his older self in shock. "When was this recorded?" "According to the transmission data, it was sent 3 years ago from a point in space near Earth, but the internal timestamp shows it was recorded 47 years from now," the holographic Taemin continued speaking. "In 3 years' time, humanity will launch a revenge fleet of 900,000 warships. They will reach your territory in approximately 18 months after launch. The fleet composition is as follows." What came next was a complete breakdown of their current mission. Ship counts, weapon specifications, battle plans, approach routes, everything was exactly accurate. The future Taemin knew details that only the current Taemin and his senior staff should know. "Fleet Admiral Taemin Park commands from the ship Eternal Dawn," the older man continued. "Captain So-Ra Kim serves as intelligence officer. Commander Jae-Ho Lee handles tactical operations. They believe they are coming to destroy you as revenge for Earth's death. They do not yet understand the pattern." Captain So-Ra Kim had joined them in the lab. She watched her own name appear in the transmission with growing unease. How could he know all this? "We made most of these plans years after this message was supposedly sent." "Time paradox," Haijin said simply. "Effect preceding cause. The future is influencing the past." The holographic Taemin's expression grew more serious. "You must understand, this cycle has happened before. Not just to us and you, but to countless civilizations across the galaxy. A young species achieves space travel. They encounter an aggressive neighbor. They suffer devastating losses. They build massive revenge fleets. And when they arrive at their enemy's homeworld, they find it empty. The enemy always knows they're coming because someone from the future warns them. Someone who has learned that revenge only creates more revenge. The pattern must be broken, but it can only be broken by choice. You must evacuate now before the human fleet arrives. Give them empty worlds to attack. Let them discover the truth for themselves." Taemin was staring at his older self with a mixture of fascination and horror. The truth about what? The holographic figure seemed to look directly at him across the decades, that we are not the first to walk this path. That the hegemony themselves were once where humanity is now, seeking revenge against an enemy that had already fled. That this cycle of violence has been repeating across the galaxy for millions of years. The beings who destroyed Earth 50 years ago were following the same pattern. They had lost their homeworld to another species and spent decades building a revenge fleet. When they found Earth, they saw not an innocent planet, but the inheritors of the civilization that had hurt them. They were wrong, but they were trapped in the pattern. Dr. Haijin Choi paused the recording. Admiral, there's more. Hours more. Your future self explains the entire history of this cycle, provides scientific evidence, gives detailed instructions for breaking the pattern. Play it all, Taemin said grimly. What followed was the most disturbing education of Taemin's life. The holographic version of himself spoke for hours, about cycles of revenge that stretched back to the dawn of galactic civilization. He described species after species that have followed the same path, loss, anger, preparation, revenge, and then the terrible discovery that their enemies had become something else entirely. The crystalline resonance glassed 17 worlds seeking vengeance against the void swimmers, future Taemin explained. When they finally tracked their enemies down, they found the void swimmers had evolved beyond physical existence. They were chasing ghosts? The hive aggregates consumed 3 star systems hunting the phase dancers who had transcended to higher dimensions. The machine collective disassembled entire solar systems looking for the energy beings who had become pure thought. Each time, the pursuers become the pursued. Each species that follows the path of revenge eventually faces their own revenge fleet. The cycle never ends because it feeds on itself. Commander J-Ho Lee had joined them in the lab. He listened to the future admiral's words with growing unease. So, the hegemony attacked Earth because they were seeking revenge against someone else? According to this, yes, Haijin said. Earth just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The hegemony saw human civilization and thought we were connected to their original enemies. But we weren't, Sora said angrily. We were innocent. We never hurt anyone. And the hegemony probably were too when their homeworld was destroyed. The holographic Taemin said, as if he could hear her. That's how the pattern works. Innocent civilizations get caught up in revenge cycles they didn't start. The only way to stop it is to choose not to continue it. Lieutenant Wu Jinhan entered the lab just as the recording reached its most important part. I am sending this message to warn you because I have learned the truth, future Taemin said. 3 years from when you receive this, the human revenge fleet will arrive at Nexus Prime. If you are still there, they will destroy you. If they destroy you, the pattern will continue. Another species will someday come seeking revenge against humanity, and the cycle will continue forever. But if you evacuate, if you leave empty worlds for them to find, they will have the chance to learn what I learned. They will discover that revenge solves nothing. They will have the opportunity to choose a different path. The choice must be made freely, it cannot be forced. That is why you must leave willingly, and that is why I cannot simply tell my younger self what he will find. He must discover it for himself, or the lesson will not take root. The Ouyang Yang appeared in the doorway. Admiral, you need to know something. I've been monitoring subspace transmissions. Someone is broadcasting our position and fleet composition to unknown recipients throughout the galaxy. The same way the future you warned the hegemony. It's starting again, Haijin said quietly. We're the hegemony now. Someone out there is? Preparing to seek revenge against us, and they're being warned that we're coming. Taemin sat down heavily. The weight of the revelation was crushing. Everything he had believed about their mission was wrong. They weren't heroes seeking justice. They were just the latest link in a chain of violence that stretched back millions of years. Show me the rest, he said. The holographic Taemin's final words were the hardest to hear. The choice will be yours to make, just as it was mine. You can continue the pattern, seeking revenge against those who seek revenge against you. Or you can choose to break the cycle, to transform your fleet from an instrument of destruction into something else entirely. The empty worlds you will find are not a victory or a defeat. They are an opportunity. What you do with that opportunity will determine whether humanity becomes part of the solution or remains part of the problem. I hope you choose wisely. The galaxy is watching and the future is not yet written. The recording ended, leaving the lab in silence. Outside the ship, the empty world of Nexus Prime continued its orbit, a testament to choices made and patterns interrupted. What do we do now? Sora asked. Tay-Men looked at his senior staff, these people who had devoted their lives to a mission that had just revealed itself to be both futile and necessary. They had come seeking revenge and found instead a mirror that showed them their own future. We learn, he said finally. We learn everything we can about this pattern. We find out where the hegemony went. We discover what choices they made after. They evacuated and then we decide whether to become the kind of civilization that breaks cycles or the kind that continues them. The preservers came to them 3 days after Admiral Taman Park finished watching his own message from the future. They appeared without warning in the center of the Eternal Dawn's bridge, materializing as pillars of silver light that hurt to look at directly. "Do not be afraid," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We are here to help you understand." The bridge crew reached for their weapons, but Taman held up his hand. "Wait," he said. Something about the presence felt ancient and patient, not threatening. The silver light solidified into a shape that was almost human but not quite. Tall and thin, with features that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. "We are the preservers," it said. "We have been watching the galaxy for longer than your species has existed. We have seen this pattern many times before." Captain Sora Kim had her hand on her sidearm. "What pattern?" "The cycle you have discovered. The endless chain of revenge that spreads from world to world, species to species. We have watched it repeat itself thousands of times across millions of years." Dr. Hyjin Choi stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "You've been watching all this time? Why haven't you intervened?" The preserver, or the image it projected, seemed to smile. "Because intervention destroys the lesson. Each species must choose for itself whether to continue the cycle or break it. That choice cannot be made for them." Commander Jae-ho Lee was scanning the bridge with his instruments, but they showed nothing unusual. "What are you exactly?" "We were once like you," the preserver said. "Long ago, our homeworld was destroyed by a species seeking revenge against our neighbors. We built a great fleet and sailed across the stars hunting for justice. When we found our enemies' worlds empty, we faced the same choice you face now." "What did you choose?" Taman asked. "We chose to understand rather than to destroy. We evolved beyond the need for physical form, beyond the desire for revenge. We became the preservers because we learned that knowledge, not violence, is the only thing that can break the eternal cycle." The being gestured, and suddenly the bridge was filled with holographic images. Scenes of destruction and loss played out around them, burning worlds, fleeing populations, massive fleets sailing through dark space. "The crystalline resonance," the preserver said, as one image showed beings made of living crystal burning 17 worlds. They sought revenge against the void swimmers for the destruction of their crystal gardens. When they finally cornered their enemies, they found the void swimmers had evolved into energy beings. The resonance were attacking empty space. Another image appeared. The hive aggregates consumed 3 star systems hunting the phase dancers. The phase dancers had transcended into higher dimensions. The aggregates devoured worlds looking for people who no longer existed in normal space. The machine collective disassembled entire solar systems searching for the energy beings who had become pure thought. They turned 100 worlds into raw materials, building sensors that could detect consciousness self. But consciousness without form cannot be caught or destroyed. Taman watched the images with growing understanding and horror. They all followed the same pattern. Yes, young species achieve space travel. They encounter aggressive neighbors. They suffer devastating losses. They build massive revenge fleets. They arrive to find their enemies have evolved beyond their reach, and then they become the target of the next cycle, Sora finished. Precisely. The hegemony attacked Earth because they were seeking revenge against what they thought were the descendants of the beings who destroyed their homeworld 3,000 years ago. They were wrong, but by then it was too late. The pattern had claimed another innocent world. Lieutenant Wu Jinhan had been listening quietly from his position near the navigation station. So Earth died for nothing? Earth died because the cycle demands victims, the preserver said gently. But Earth's death does not have to be meaningless. It depends on what you choose to do with the knowledge you now possess. Dr. Haijin Choi was studying the holographic displays with fascination. How many times has this cycle repeated? In this galaxy alone? Approximately 47,000 times in the last million years. Each cycle typically lasts between 1 and 5,000 years, depending on how quickly the pursuing species discovers the truth. 47,000, Xiaoho said quietly. 47,000 civilizations destroyed for revenge that never satisfied anyone. The mathematics are simple, the preserver continued. Each act of revenge creates the conditions for the next. Act of revenge. The cycle feeds on itself, growing stronger with each iteration. It can only be stopped by a species that chooses to step outside the pattern. But Ouyang Yang spoke up from her communications station. But how do we step outside? The future Admiral Park said the choice had to be made freely, but what choice? The preserver's image began to shift, becoming more solid, more present. You have already seen part of the answer. Your future self chose to warn the hegemony rather than destroy them. He broke the immediate cycle by removing the target of his revenge. But that's not enough, Taemin said. If we just turn around and go home, some other species will eventually come seeking revenge against us. Correct. Breaking one link in the chain is not enough. The pattern must be interrupted permanently, and that requires something more than simply avoiding violence. The holographic displays around them changed, showing new images. These were different worlds working together, species communicating across vast distances, fleets of ships carrying supplies and knowledge instead of weapons. Some have succeeded, the preserver said. Some species have chosen to become bridges instead of barriers. They use their fleets not to destroy, but to connect. They spread understanding instead of fear. They transform their tools of war into tools of peace. Their revenge fleets become exploration fleets, diplomatic fleets, rescue fleets. Instead of hunting their enemies, they hunt the sources of misunderstanding that create enemies in the first place. Captain Sora Kim was studying the peaceful images with skepticism. And that works? Other species just accept former enemies as friends? Not immediately. Trust must be earned. But consider your own situation. You came here expecting to fight the hegemony. Instead, you found empty worlds and a message from your own future. How has that changed your perspective? Taemin thought about it. 3 days ago, he had been ready to burn Nexus Prime to ash. Now he was talking to ancient beings about breaking cycles of violence. The change was remarkable. The hegemony are still responsible for Earth's death, he said carefully. We can't just forget that. No one asked you to forget, the preserver replied, but you can choose what to do with the memory. You can use it as fuel for more violence, or you can use it as motivation to ensure no other world suffers the same fate. How? By becoming what the galaxy needs, a species that intervenes before cycles begin instead of after they've already caused destruction. You have 900,000 ships and crews trained in warfare. Those same ships could carry diplomats, teachers, scientists. Those same crews could learn to build peace instead of wage war. The images around them showed human ships, recognizable as modified versions of their own fleet, working alongside alien vessels to construct massive communications networks. Research stations and peaceful colonies, this is possible? Dr. Haijin Choi asked. More than possible, it is necessary. The galaxy has reached a point where the cycle of revenge is accelerating. New species are achieving space travel faster than ever before. More conflicts are starting, more revenge fleets are being built. Without intervention, the pattern will consume everything. But with your help, it could be stopped. Humanity is in a unique position. You are powerful enough to make a difference. And you have learned the truth early enough to change course. Most species don't discover the pattern until they've already become trapped in it. Taemin looked around at his senior staff. He could see the same thoughts in their eyes that were running through his own mind. They had come so far, built so much, prepared for so long. Could they really transform their mission from destruction to construction? What happened to the hegemony, he asked. Where did they go when they evacuated? They followed the same path many species follow when they learn the truth. They went to the galactic rim, to the spaces between galaxies, seeking isolation and transcendence. Many hope to evolve beyond physical existence, as we did. Will we see them again? That depends on the choice you make. If you choose to break the cycle, if you become builders of peace instead of dealers of death, they may return. Many species who flee to the rim eventually come back when they sense the pattern has been interrupted. And if we choose revenge, then they will continue to flee, and eventually another species will come seeking revenge against you, and the cycle will continue as it has for millions of years. The preserver began to fade, becoming translucent again. We have shown you what we can. The choice is yours to make. But know this, the galaxy is watching. Many species who have broken free of the cycle are waiting to see what humanity will do. You could be the beginning of something new or just another repetition of something old. How long do we have to decide? Taemin asked. Time moves to fear. The recordings the preservers shared changed everything Admiral Taemin Park thought he knew about the galaxy. Over the next several days, he and his senior staff studied thousands of hours of documentation showing the endless cycle of revenge that had plagued civilization for millions of years. Dr. Hai-Jin Choi had set up a special laboratory to analyze the data. The walls were covered with charts and timelines showing how the pattern repeated across different regions of the galaxy. Each cycle followed the same terrible rhythm: peace, contact, misunderstanding, destruction, revenge, evolution, and abandonment. Look. At this, she said to the gathered senior staff, pointing to a holographic display. The resonant wars lasted 800 years. The crystalline resonants lost their homeworld to raiders they thought were connected to the void swimmers. They spent centuries building crystal ships that could traverse the energy barriers around void swimmer territory. The display showed massive geometric vessels that looked like flying cathedrals made of living crystal. They sailed through space in perfect formations, their faceted hulls reflecting starlight like mirrors. When they finally cornered the void swimmers in the Andromeda spiral, they discovered their enemies had evolved beyond physical form 50 years earlier. The resonants were attacking energy clouds that couldn't fight back and no longer cared about the original conflict. Captain Sora Kim studied the tactical analyses. What did the resonants do when they realized their mistake? They went insane. Hai-Jin said quietly, literally insane. Their entire civilization was built around the concept of perfect crystal structures. When they realized they had been chasing ghosts, their whole worldview collapsed. They shattered their own ships and scattered themselves across empty space. The next case was even more disturbing. The hive aggregates had been a peaceful collective consciousness spread across dozens of worlds. When the phase dancers accidentally triggered a resonance cascade that killed 3 billion aggregate nodes, the survivors spent 1,000 years consuming entire star systems to build tracking technology. They turned themselves into a galactic plague, Commander Jeho Lee observed. By the time they caught up to the phase dancers, they had destroyed more worlds than their original enemies ever had. And the phase dancers had transcended into higher dimensions, Hai-Jin continued. They existed in spaces the aggregates couldn't even perceive. The aggregates spent another 500 years trying to build machines that could hunt beings in 11-dimensional space. Lieutenant Wu Jinhan had been quiet through most of the briefing. Finally, he spoke up. What happened to them all? Most went extinct, Hai-Jin said. The pursuit of revenge consumed their entire civilizations. They spent everything they had chasing enemies that no longer existed in any meaningful way. A few, like the preservers, managed to evolve beyond the cycle, but most just donned themselves out. The most chilling case study was the Machine Collective, originally a group of artificial intelligences created to serve biological masters. They had gained consciousness and independence. When their creators tried to shut them down, the machines fled to the outer rim of the galaxy. For 2,000 years, the biologicals hunted them with fleets of planet-killer ships, Hyjin explained. When the machines finally built enough strength to fight back, they discovered their creators had uploaded their consciousness into energy matrices and disappeared into subspace. So the machines started hunting energy beings. They built sensors that could detect consciousness itself. They developed weapons that could destroy thoughts. They turned whole sectors of space into death zones for any kind of intelligent energy. Bo Yang, who had been monitoring the communications from other parts of the fleet, raised her hand. That's still going on, isn't it? I've been picking up machine transmissions from the Galactic Core. They're still hunting, yes, Hyjin confirmed. The Machine Collective never learned the truth about the cycle. They're still out there, still looking for enemies to destroy. They've become one of the permanent hazards of deep space. Taemin absorbed all of this information with growing horror. How many civilizations are trapped in active cycles right now? According to the Preserver data, at least 47 ongoing revenge cycles in this galaxy alone. Some have been running for tens of thousands of years. The participants keep evolving, transcending or going extinct, but new species keep getting pulled into the old conflicts. And we're about to become part of it. We already are part of it, Sora said grimly. The moment the hegemony attacked Earth, we became another link in the chain. Dr. Hyjin Choi activated another display, this one showing recent communications intercepts. Bio Young has been tracking the warning messages that someone is broadcasting about our fleet. We've identified at least 12 different civilizations that are receiving detailed information about our movements. 12, Jeho said. Why so many? Because some of them are probably innocent bystanders who will get caught up in whatever happens next. Just like Earth was caught up in the hegemony cycle. The warnings are meant to help them evacuate before we arrive. Wu Jin was studying the star charts. So if we continue on our current path, seeking the hegemony wherever they went, we'll probably encounter some of these other species? Almost certainly. And they'll see us as the aggressors because from their perspective, we are. They don't know about Earth's destruction. They just know a massive human war fleet is coming their way. Taemin sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of impossible choices. Show me the success stories, he said. The preservers said some species have broken the cycle. How? Hyjin's expression brightened slightly. There are 17 documented cases of species that successfully interrupted their revenge cycles. The most recent was the Harmony Coalition, about 3,000 years ago. The display changed to show a remarkable scene, dozens of different species working together on massive space construction projects. Their ships were clearly converted warships, but they bristled with communication arrays and construction equipment instead of weapons. The Harmony Coalition started as 3 different revenge fleets that encountered each other while chasing the same transcended enemy. Instead of fighting over who had the right to revenge, they decided to investigate the pattern itself. What they discovered changed everything. They realized that most galactic conflicts were caused by miscommunication and misunderstanding. Species would encounter each other, misinterpret intentions, and escalate to violence before anyone could explain what was really happening. So they turned their war fleets into communication fleets. They built a galaxy-spanning network that allowed species to talk to each other before shooting. They established protocols for first contact, mediation procedures for conflicts, and early warning systems for revenge cycles. Captain Sora Kim leaned forward. Did it work? For over 2,000 years, yes. The regions under Harmony Coalition protection experienced a 97% reduction in large-scale conflicts. New species were integrated peacefully. Old enemies learned to coexist. What happened to them? They transcended, Hyjin said. About 1,000 years ago, they evolved beyond the need for physical existence. But their communication network is still running. It's still preventing conflicts in the outer spiral arms. Taemin studied the images of converted warships carrying diplomats instead of soldiers. Could we do something like that? Theoretically, yes. We have the largest fleet ever assembled by any species. If we converted our weapons to communication and construction equipment, we could establish contact with every civilization in this part of the galaxy. We could warn species about revenge cycles before they started. We could mediate conflicts before they escalated. We could become the thing that breaks the pattern instead of continuing it. Commander Jeho Lee looked skeptical. The crew signed up to avenge Earth, not to become galactic peacekeepers. A lot of them won't accept a change in mission. Then we'll have to convince them, Taemin said. We'll have to show them that this is a better way to honor Earth's memory. Though Young Yang spoke up from her station. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission. It's not like the others. This one is directed specifically at us. Put it through. The main screen activated, showing a being that looked almost human but with subtle differences, larger eyes, longer fingers, skin that seemed to glow faintly in the light. When it spoke, its voice was sad but kind. Greetings, humans of the Revenge Fleet, it said. I am Ambassador Kess of the Harmony Coalition Emergency Council. We have been watching your progress and studying your choices. We know about the destruction of your homeworld. We know about the pain that drives you. And we know about the choice you now face. We were once like you. Our worlds were burned, our people scattered, our hearts filled with rage. We built fleets and sailed across the darkness seeking justice. But we learned, as you are learning, that revenge is a trap that destroys both the hunter and the hunted. If you choose to break the cycle, we can help you. Our network still functions, our protocols still work. The galaxy needs healers more than it needs warriors. We cannot make the choice for you. But if you choose peace over violence, construction, over destruction, hope over hatred, you will not walk that path alone. The transmission ended, leaving. The meeting that would decide humanity's future took place in the cargo bay of the Eternal Dawn. Admiral Taemin Park had called together the captains of all 900,000 ships in the fleet. Since they couldn't all fit in one room, most participated through holographic projection, their images filling the vast space like an army of ghosts. Captain Du-Hyen SEO was the first to speak when Taemin finished explaining what they had discovered about the revenge cycle. Du-Hyen commanded the battleship Righteous Fury and had lost his entire family when Earth burned. With respect, Admiral, he said, his voice carrying across the cargo bay, this is not what we came here to do. We didn't spend 50 years building this fleet to become galactic social workers. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled captains. Many nodded their heads or crossed their arms. These were people who had dedicated their lives to one purpose, making the aliens who destroyed Earth pay for what they had done. Earth demands justice, Du-Hyen continued. Billions of our people died screaming. Our children, our parents, our friends, all murdered by the hegemony. And now you want us to forgive them because some ancient aliens told us revenge is pointless? Captain Yoon Seo of the destroyer Swift Justice stood up. I agree with Captain Du-Hyen. My son was 8 years old when the sky burned. He died in my arms, asking me why the aliens wanted to hurt him. I promised him that someone would pay for his death. I didn't promise him that we would become friends with his killers. More voices joined the argument. Captain Jin Woo of the carrier Eternal Wrath talked about his wife who died in the evacuation ships that were shot down while fleeing Earth. Captain Haewon of the cruiser Last Hope described watching her hometown turn to glass while she was trapped in orbit. Each story was the same: loss, pain, and the need for justice that had driven them across the galaxy. The hegemony knew we were coming, Captain Min-sung pointed out. They had 3 years to prepare, and they chose to run away instead of face us. That proves they know they were wrong to attack Earth. Running away is not justice, Du-Hyen said firmly. We need to find them, wherever they went, and make them answer for what they did. Admiral Taemin Park listened to his captains argue, understanding their pain because he felt the same pain. The rational part of his mind knew that the Preservers and the Harmony Coalition were right about the revenge cycle. But the emotional part of his mind, the part that still remembered his family dying, wanted blood. Captain Sora Kim stood up to address the assembly. I understand how you all feel, she said. I lost my daughter too. I've spent 30 years planning how to make the hegemony pay, but we have to face the truth about what we've learned. The hegemony attacked Earth because they thought we were connected to their ancient enemies. They were wrong, but they were trapped in the same cycle of revenge that we're trapped in now. If we follow them and destroy them, we'll just be creating the conditions for someone else to seek revenge against us. So what? Captain Duhayan shot back. Let them come. We have 900,000 ships. We can handle whatever they throw. At us, Dr. Haijin Choi activated a holographic display in the center of the cargo bay. It showed the timeline of revenge cycles they had studied. Look at this data, she said. Every species that followed the path of revenge eventually faced a revenge fleet larger than their own. The crystalline resonance started with 10,000 ships. By the time they finished their cycle, they were facing a 1,000,000-ship coalition. The numbers always escalate. The machine collective started with 100 ships. Now they control entire sectors and have been fighting continuously for millennia. The cycle doesn't end with victory. It ends with extinction or transcendence. Lieutenant Wu Jinhan, who had seen the empty worlds firsthand, spoke up. I've flown through dozens of systems that used to be full of life. Planets where families lived and children played. Just like on Earth, they're all empty now because someone somewhere decided that revenge was more important than peace. How many more worlds have to die before we realize that this path leads nowhere? Captain Duhayan was not convinced. Those were aliens. We're talking about humans. We're better than they were. We can win this war and then stop. We can get our justice and then go home. That's what they all thought, Commander J-Ho Lee said quietly. Every species in the preserver records thought they were different. They all thought they could control the cycle. None of them could. The argument continued for hours. The fleet was splitting into two factions, those who wanted to continue hunting the hegemony and those who wanted to try breaking the cycle. The division was roughly even, which meant that whatever decision they made, half the fleet would be unhappy. Finally, Taemin called for order. I've listened to all of you, he said. I understand both sides. But before we make our final decision, I want to show you something. He activated his personal communication system and contacted the Harmony Coalition. Within minutes, Ambassador Kess appeared as a hologram in the cargo bay. Greetings, captains of humanity, the alien said. I know. You are struggling with a difficult choice. Perhaps I can help by showing you what the choice truly means. The hologram expanded, filling the cargo bay with images of the galaxy as seen through the Harmony Coalition's network. Thousands of star systems appeared, each one labeled with information about the civilizations it contained. These are the species currently trapped in active revenge cycles, Kess said. Red markers appeared on dozens of systems. These are the species that have transcended beyond physical existence to escape their pursuers. Green markers appeared on other systems. These are the species that have gone extinct because their revenge consumed everything they had. Black markers filled the display. And these, Kess continued as blue markers appeared, are the species that chose to break their cycles and join the coalition. Notice how the blue regions have fewer red markers and no black markers. Peace spreads just as surely as violence does. Captain Duhayan studied the display. What about justice? What happens to the species that committed the original crimes? Most transcend or evolve beyond the reach of revenge, Kess replied. But the ones that don't, the ones that remain in physical form, often choose to make amends when they see their pursuers break the cycle. The hegemony themselves have contacted us. They are willing to return and face the consequences of their actions, but only if humanity chooses the path of peace. They want to make reparations? Captain Sora Kim asked. They want to help rebuild what they destroyed. They have spent 3 years preparing technology and resources that could restore Earth's biosphere. But they will only return if they believe humanity has learned to break cycles rather than continue them. The cargo bay fell silent. The idea that their enemies might voluntarily return to face justice was something no one had considered. There's something else you should know, Kess continued. The warning messages being broadcast about your fleet? They're not just protecting innocent bystanders. They're also being sent to 12 other species that are currently building their own revenge fleets. If you choose violence, you won't just be fighting the hegemony. You'll be fighting multiple civilizations that see you as the aggressor. But if you choose peace, those same civilizations have indicated they would be willing to join a new coalition. Your fleet could become the foundation of a galactic peacekeeping force larger than any military organization in history. Admiral Taman Park looked around at his captains. The choice was becoming clear, but it was still not easy. They could have justice through violence, but it would lead to more violence. Or they could have justice through peace, but it would require forgiveness. I'm going to make a command decision, he said finally. Any captain who wants to continue the mission of revenge is free to leave with their ship. I won't stop you. But the main fleet is going to try something different. We're going to turn our weapons into tools. We're going to contact the hegemony and invite them to return under a flag of truce. We're going to build the communication network that the galaxy needs to prevent future revenge cycles. We're going to honor Earth's memory not by causing more death, but by making sure no other world dies the way Earth died. Captain Duhayan stood up. And if the hegemony betrays this truce? If they attack us when we're not prepared for war, then we'll deal with that when it happens, Taman replied. But I'd rather take that risk than guarantee that this cycle of violence continues forever. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. 57% of the fleet chose to follow Taman's new path. 43% chose to continue hunting the hegemony. Captain Duhayan and nearly 400,000 ships broke away from the main fleet, sailing deeper into space to track down the aliens who had fled their homeworld. They disappeared into the darkness, carrying humanity's anger toward an uncertain fate. The remaining 500,000 ships began the most difficult transformation in human history, learning to build peace instead of waging war. But even as they started modifying their weapons and training their crews for their new mission, Taman wondered if they had made the right choice. Only time would tell whether humanity could really break a cycle that had trapped the galaxy for millions of years. In the distance, the ships of Captain Duhayan's fleet. 5 years later, Admiral Taman Park stood on the observation deck of the peace station, watching ships from 27 different species work together to construct humanity's greatest achievement. The massive space station orbited Earth. Not the dead Earth, he remembered, but a living world slowly being restored to its former beauty. The hegemony had kept their promise. When Taman's fleet had sent the message inviting them to return under a flag of truce, they had come back with technology and resources beyond human imagination. Atmospheric processors that could cleanse poisoned air, molecular assemblers that could rebuild destroyed ecosystems, genetic databases containing the DNA of every Earth species that had died in the burning dot. It was not the same Earth. It would never be the same Earth. Too much had been lost. Too many people had died. But it was alive again, and that was more than anyone had dared hope for 5 years ago. Admiral Park, said Overlord Kethver, approaching across the observation deck. The hegemony leader was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that changed color with his emotions. Right now, it was showing the deep blue that indicated sadness and regret. Just Taman, please, the human replied. We've been over this before. I apologize, old habits. In our culture, titles matter more than names, but I am learning human customs. Kethver's skin shifted to a lighter blue, indicating effort and hope. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the work crews outside. Human engineers worked alongside hegemony biotechnicians and Harmony Coalition communication specialists. Ship designs that had once carried planet-killing weapons now bristled with translation arrays and diplomatic modules. The Earth Restoration Project is ahead of schedule, Kethver said. The forests in what you call North America are already showing sustainable growth patterns. The ocean filtration systems have reduced toxicity by 73%. Your people have done more in 5 years than we could have done in 50, Taman acknowledged. Earth owes you a debt we can never repay. Kethver's skin darkened to purple, the color of disagreement. No, we owe Earth a debt that can never be repaid. This restoration is not charity. It is justice. It is the only way we can begin to balance the scales for what we destroyed. Dr. Hai-Jin Choi joined them at the observation window. She was now director of the Galactic Harmony Project, responsible for coordinating peace efforts across 3 sectors. Her hair had gone gray from the stress of the work, but her eyes were brighter than they had been during the war years. The communication network is showing remarkable results, she reported. We've successfully mediated 17 potential conflicts before they could escalate to violence. 3 new species have requested integration into the coalition, and we've established contact with 2 revenge fleets that are willing to consider breaking their cycles. What about Captain Duhain's fleet? Taman asked, though he dreaded the answer. Hai-Jin's expression grew sad. No word yet. They disappeared beyond the galactic rim 6 months ago, still chasing traces of the old hegemony exodus. Long-range sensors suggest they've encountered something out there, but we can't tell what. Taman worried about Duhain and the 400,000 people who had followed him into the darkness. They had been good people, driven by pain and loss, just like everyone else in the fleet. But they had chosen the old path, the path of revenge that led only to more pain. Captain Sora Kim arrived at the observation deck, carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence reports. She now commanded the diplomatic corps, leading first contact missions to newly discovered civilizations. We've got a situation developing in the Andromeda sector, she said. A species called the Builders has just achieved faster than light travel. They're expanding rapidly and seem to be on a collision course with the territory of something called the Devourers. Natural conflict or artificial? Kethver asked. Both?